Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show. Listen to me. J-Mac is panicking. The warden done had somebody bump down on his sister. They got the recordings. He done leaked the information to the compound that J-Mac was on, and it spread around the prison and other prisons that he was an informant for the warden. See, none of that hurts the warden. He's got all the cards. He's got all the aces in the deck. J-Mac is outwitted. He wanted to play a big boy game, but he ain't got on his big boy pants. Yeah, see, you can be the head of a gang, right? That don't mean you got what it takes to play on that stage. These people play for keeps. They get what they want out of you, and then they toss you to the side like you were a piece of trash, and that's what J-Mac was feeling right now. So he called on the one person that he felt and believed that he could confide in, that he could tell the truth about what happened and get the right advice as to what to do. Because at this point, J-Mac had started to come to the realization that he's not going home. He had been played. And by him being played, he betrayed the gang that he was head of, Two-Face Mafia. And now he knew that he had to figure a way out of this mess. So when he called his most trusted lieutenant to come talk to him, he came to the cell. And as they sat in the cell, J-Mac looked out the door and he told him, he said, look, I'm going to tell you some things that you're going to probably be upset with me about. I'm going to tell you some things that I'm asking you not to repeat to anybody else outside this cell. I'm going to tell you some things that are going to make you be disappointed in me. So the lieutenant, he looked at him and he told him, he said, you can tell me anything, Supreme Leader, and we'll figure it out together. And J-Mac responded to him. He told him, he said, that's what I was hoping to hear because I need some help. I'm in a bind. So he sat there and he started to lay out the story as it came to him, how when he was approached by the warden, the commissioner, and the governor, and they asked him to come back out of retirement. They asked him to come back and get the gang, the Two-Face Mafia, in order, in line, so that they could lower the crime on the streets. And if he did this favor for them, that they would cut his time and he would have a chance to get out one day. They promised him everything, but they'd given him nothing. And after he went through all of the elaborate steps to make sure that everything that he could do on his end could work out right, he said he called the warden. He told the warden, I've done my end. It's your turn now. And he said the warden basically put him in check and told him, stay in your lane. Disrespected him to the utmost. Used him and tossed him to the side. And then he told him how the warden had sent some individuals to his sister's house and how they had threatened her and beat her up a little bit to get the recordings that he had of the phone call that he had made with the warden. Now his lieutenant, he set the stoic face, not showing any emotion because that's just who he was. And when the Supreme Leader, J-Mac, finished speaking, he said, you played yourself. He said, you know as well as I know that people like us, we don't get breaks like that. We don't get second chances. So why would you put yourself in a situation like that? And J-Mac looked at him, he told him, he said, look, I would do anything to go home. And the lieutenant, he looked at him, he said, I see. You would even betray the people that are most loyal to you to go home. And when he said that to J-Mac, J-Mac looked at him and the look of concern flashed over his face. The lieutenant knew what he was thinking. And he said, listen to me. I'm going to keep it real with you. But what we talk about in here, it's going to stay in here. And that calmed J-Mac down a little bit because he had already decided in his mind that if his lieutenant didn't come the way he needed to come, he wasn't going to leave the cell alive. He couldn't take a chance on that. And he told the lieutenant, I'm glad to hear that. I knew I could trust you. So the lieutenant said, so what is it that you think we can do? What are you trying to achieve? What is it that you want? And he told him, he said, I know I'm not getting out, but I can't let him treat me like this. I can't let him get away with this. And he said, is he the one that's spreading these rumors around the prison that you're an informant for him? And he said, it's got to be him. It can't be nobody else. He said, so you've told me everything that you've done for him, everything that he promised you, and now you want your lick back. And that's when J Mac told him, yeah, I want my lick back. I want him to know that he can't play me like that. And the lieutenant, he sat there and he thought about it, he thought about it. He said, well, he said, how dirty are you willing to get? And he said, as dirty as necessary. I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure he understands who I am. See, now the narcissism starts to come out of him. That gang side starts to come out of him, where he feels offended. He played himself, but he's offended. He didn't get what he wanted. He used and manipulated people, laid people down where they'll never get up again, and now he's offended because it didn't work out the way he wanted it to work out. The audacity of this man. See, he's betraying what most gang members portray. When it don't go right for them, they feel upset and hurt. No matter what they did to get to the point that they're at, no matter who they had to cross, no matter what they had to do, if it don't work out and they don't get what they want, what they expect, what they believe that they are owed, they get offended. I was once like that. I was once like that. If it didn't go my way, now you ain't straight. And I'm gonna strike. I'm gonna get you. And see, that's where J-Mac was at. He was ready to strike, but he needed somebody that was a little bit clear-headed than him, somebody that can calculate this thing out so that it would work out the way that it needed to work out. But the lieutenant told him, he said, man, we can't touch the warden. Hands off. And J-Mac said, I understand what you're saying. Because see, listen to me. When you do things like that, you're talking electric chair. Death penalty. And the lieutenant wasn't willing to risk that. He said, but what we can do is undo all of the things that you've done. Remember, they came to you to solve a problem that they couldn't solve. He said, so now we need to just turn that faucet back on and just let the water run. Don't worry about it if it overflows the sink and it gets all over the floor. Let it run. Let it run. And no matter what they say, let it run. So J-Mac, he leaned back in the chair that he had in the room, and he said, man, the simplest thing, I couldn't even think of that. He said, no, you couldn't think of that because your mind wasn't clear. Your mind wasn't clear enough to think of that, but mine is. And he said, but I need something in return for this. And J-Mac looked at him and he told him, he said, name it. He said, you gotta go. He said, you gotta go back into retirement. And you gotta give the spot to me. And nobody will ever know what you did. Nobody. So J-Mac looked at him and he had to think real hard and fast right now because he knew that once he gave up the spot again, he'd never be able to get it back. And he wasn't so sure now that the lieutenant would make sure that he would be safe. He was starting to feel like he was being played again. So as he was sitting in the chair, he let his arm swing down to the side because he had a butcher knife that was taped to the leg of the chair. And he said, look, do we have an understanding? And the lieutenant looked at him, leaned forward from the bed to the chair they were face to face. And he told him, when have you ever known me to not keep my word? J Mac looked at him and he said, never. But he said, this is a different circumstance. If I retire and I walk away again, what will people say? He said, no, you're not going to do it right away. He said, we're going to get some things established. And when it gets out of hand, we're going to let them run wild. And when it gets out of hand, you're going to tell them that you don't have any more in you, that you're tired, that you're tired. You try to do everything that you can, but you don't have any more gas in your tank. And when you tell them that you don't have any more gas in your tank, you're going to tell them that it's time for you to go. And this time you won't be coming back. You're going to retire for good. But you're going to hand it over to me. And then I'm going to rule. And he said, then when the warden comes to me, I'm going to let him know. No more peace. Two-Face Mafia is going to do what Two-Face Mafia wants to do. So J-Mac looked at him and he said, okay, that's what we'll do. He said, but you're going to have to make the call. And you're going to have to let everybody know, get money. He said, you're going to have to make it look as though you're taxing the prison. And you're going to tax them and you're going to tell them, get the money however you need to get it. And he said, that's going to release the hounds because you're going to have a lot of people that are not going to want to pay. So it's going to have to be violence involved. And that would turn up the heat on the warden. So they made the call. They got everybody on the conference line. All the brothers were on the conference line and he told them, he said, look, this is what we're going to do. In addition to the dues that are going to be paid by the Two-Face Mafia members, we're going to tax everybody in the prison. We're going to tax them to use the phone. We're going to tax them to use the shower. We're going to tax them for just living in the building. And we're going to put so much pressure on them that we're going to get rich. So the brothers, the lieutenants, all of the people that were listening, they were thinking, why now? Why now? What changed? Why do you want to do this? He said, look, manipulating him again. He said, the way we're going to do this and why I want to do it is because we have to have money. We have to maintain our hold over everybody's head. This lying and manipulating and using them. But he couldn't tell them what was really going on. And the other lieutenant, the one that he trusted the most, he's on the conference line too, and he's listening to this conversation. And what he's saying is making sense to them. And the lieutenant, he feels it. He knows the body. He knows the people that he's associated with. He knows that this is what they want to do, but they're unsure because they just saw the Tasmanian devil get butchered. They just understood that everybody that was doing it the way the Tasmanian devil wanted to do it, he done bumped them down and he done made them change their ways. And now all of a sudden, they don't know what to do. So the lieutenant stepped in and he said, listen to me, brothers. This is something that has to be done. The way our former supreme leader was doing it, the Tasmanian devil, he was lining his own pockets. And that's why he was labeled a traitor. That's why he met the fate that he met. But see, right now, we all are going to share in the wealth, as it always should be. And our supreme leader, J Mac, has come up with this way that all of us can benefit. What you get, you only kick up a percentage to the supreme leader. Everything else, you keep. We're carving every prison up. This is yours. You are in charge. You get the money. As long as you continue to kick it up, you good. When you don't kick it up, we're going to bump down. It's mafioso. So you started to hear all the brothers talking about, yeah, that's what's up. That's what's up, because they knew once they started to implement this plan that they were all going to get rich. And they were going to get rich fast. Some of them even started counting the money and spending the money before they even had it. So they all started to yell out in unison, "We agree, Supreme Leader. We agree, Supreme Leader." Now J-Mac, he sat back and he listened to how his lieutenant, his most trusted lieutenant, had just manipulated and played him. Just like a puppeteer. You gotta feed them. You gotta give them a little something. And they'll do anything you want. You show them that you care about them, and they'll go to the mat for you. And that's what he had just done. He made it about them and not about him. And in doing so, he made it all about him. See, that's that next level of manipulation that most people don't understand. You gotta understand that. See, sometimes you gotta give a little to get it all. And that's what he just did. Now J-Mac, he sat and he listened. And he was reveling in what had just happened. He said, this just might work. I might just make it through this. So the first month came and went. And I'm talking about, listen to me, the 20% that they was kicking up, it was plenty money. And they were keeping 80 and dividing it amongst themselves. And they were all getting it. Yeah, they had problems, they had trouble. And some of the individuals in other organizations, and peons included, had to be dealt with. And now, the phone started ringing again. The warden started to call him, but J-Mac never answered him. So they paid him a visit. They come in, put the handcuffs on him, set him down, and told him that we needed to rap. Why are you not answering these calls? And he told them, I don't answer to you or anybody else in blue. We had an agreement. We had a deal. And you didn't abide by that deal. You brought it to me and you didn't keep your word. So the warden is looking at him and he's telling him, look, get it under control. And then that's when J-Mac looked at him and said, it's not up to me anymore. Remember the little rumors that you spread about me? He said, I had to step down, even though he hadn't done it yet. Warden don't know that. But he tells him he's stepped down. So the warden's eyes got real big and lit up. He's like, what? What did you do that for? He said, because it was either that or die. So now, what's going on is what you deserve. He said, who's in charge? Who's in charge now of the Two-Face Mafia? And J-Mac said, I don't know. It was a secret ballot. Only those that voted know. And they'll never tell. You'll never be able to find out who's in charge again. Ever. So the warden looked at him and got angry. He said, take him to the hole. And J-Mac stood up and he whistled. Then members of the Two-Face Mafia stepped to the front of the cell and said, what's up? He said, tell him to get these handcuffs off of me. So they looked at the warden. Take these handcuffs off of him. The warden looked at him. He said, get out of the way. Get to your cells immediately and lock down. So the warden looked outside the cell and he saw that the whole row was full of Two-Face Mafia members. At least 30. And it was only 10 officers. And they told him one more time, take the handcuffs off of him and leave before you can. So the warden looked at his officer. He said, take the handcuffs off of him. They took the handcuffs off and they walked out. And he said, we're not done. And J-Mac said, yes, we are. We're done. He said, the next time you see me, you better be ready to honor your word. Because if you don't honor your word, the next time you see me, we're going to have problems. So the warden walked out of the cell nervously, not knowing what was going to happen to him once he got out of the cell. But he walked out and they let him go straight down the wall. And he left the building. And he left the building. J-Mac sat down on the bed. of sigh of relief. And the lieutenant that was sitting there, he said, well, it looks like you're going to make your move a little bit earlier than we planned. And J-Mac said, yeah, I may as well do it now. So he called everybody into the room, everybody that was on the wall. And he said, I got something to tell y'all. He said, things have been pretty good. Things have been going smooth for us this last month or so. And he said, I want to keep things going as long as we can do it. He said, but there's one thing that's going to change. And they all said in unison, what is that, Supreme Leader? And he told them, it's time for me to step down. My job is done. The family is in good hands. And he said, I'm going to hand it over to my lieutenant here. And everybody looked at him. And they looked back at the J-Mac, the Supreme Leader. And they said, when did you decide this? He said, I've been talking about it for a while. Now, as Supreme Leader, the lieutenant would have to take a name. So he looked up at everybody and he stood up. And the lieutenants that were in the room with him, they said, what name are you going to take, Supreme Leader? He told them, I'm going to take the name of B-Mac. That's what you'll call me from here on out, B-Mac. So they all said, we have a new Supreme Leader, and his name is B-Mac. All due respect to J-Mac, letting it be known that he was to always be honored and respected as a Supreme Leader. But B-Mac was in charge now. And if you want to know how things continue to rock and roll and turn out, you're going to have to tune in to the next episode, because this ain't over for J-Mac. This ain't over for J-Mac. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.